I uncovered every secret from the last 30 years.
And I have given all the proofs of who was involved with Diddy. I have presented the videotape of Diddy's parties as evidence. Now no one can save Diddy and the other celebs. After watching the rest of the documentary, you'll understand everything.
Today, a new conversation has started across the internet, and it all begins with 50 Cent. Because 50 Cent has just released a new Netflix documentary, and according to 50 Cent, the documentary dives deep into something that has been whispered about for years. Diddy's secret parties, private gatherings, closed-door meetings, late-night events that allegedly happened far away from cameras. According to 50 Cent, these were not ordinary celebrity parties. Instead, 50 Cent suggests there were private environments where only selected people were allowed inside. Secret parties, closed-door gatherings, late-night events involving powerful figures from the entertainment industry. And according to 50 Cent, some of these environments allegedly involved young women, private relationships, and connections that were never publicly acknowledged. But this story didn't start today. Back on December 2nd, 2025, 50 Cent released the first Netflix documentary about Diddy. That series had 4 parts, and it immediately shook the hip-hop world. The internet exploded with discussions. People started asking questions about Diddy, his private environments, and the stories that insiders had reportedly talked about for years. Then after that documentary, 50 Cent returned again with another release, continuing the conversation. And now 50 Cent is back once more with a brand new Netflix documentary. And according to 50 Cent, this one goes even deeper into the story surrounding Diddy. Throughout the documentary, 50 Cent repeatedly mentions Diddy. He talks about private rooms, secret gatherings, and environments that allegedly operated away from public visibility. Before going deeper into this video, make sure to like this video, subscribe to our channel, and hit the bell icon so you never miss any new updates like this. Now let's get back to the story, because according to 50 Cent, what he describes in this new documentary raises a bigger question about the environments surrounding Diddy. What really happened at those secret parties? And why were they always kept so private?
I am the fucking hardest hustler in the world. This is Savage Part 2. Don't tell me about shit. It's 2022 and I'm still a savage. Whatever I want, I get. Whatever I want, I fucking get.
In the opening section of the documentary, 50 Cent immediately shifts the focus toward environments that most people never saw. Not the red carpets, not the public award shows, not the celebrity interviews. Instead, 50 Cent begins talking about private spaces allegedly connected to Diddy, environments that, according to the documentary, existed far away from cameras and public attention. According to 50 Cent, many of the most important interactions involving Diddy allegedly happened inside secret meetings held away from public view. These were not industry events announced publicly. They were described as private gatherings where only a small number of people were invited. Rooms that were not open to the public. Locations that insiders reportedly knew about, but that rarely appeared in media coverage. And according to 50 Cent, most of these meetings often happened inside private rooms with carefully controlled timing. Not during normal daytime schedules, not during official events. Instead, these gatherings allegedly took place at times when the public spotlight was already gone. The documentary suggests that access to these rooms was tightly controlled. Guest lists were selective. Security was often present, and only certain individuals were allowed inside. According to 50 Cent, the most interesting detail about these meetings was what allegedly happened once the doors were closed, because the documentary suggests that many conversations inside those rooms never left the room. No recordings, no public confirmation, no official interviews discussing what happened. Just stories remembered by the people who were there. Moments that insiders reportedly talked about privately, but that the public never saw. Alongside these meetings, 50 Cent also describes what he calls closed-door parties connected to Diddy. These were not typical celebrity parties shared across social media. Instead, the documentary suggests they were private events where entry was restricted. Only selected guests, only familiar faces. And according to 50 Cent, the same individuals reportedly appeared repeatedly at many of these gatherings. The same circles, the same environments. One and the same people moving through the same private spaces again and again, which according to 50 Cent is one of the patterns that stood out the most. Because in an industry where nearly every event is photographed and shared online, These gatherings allegedly remained unusually quiet. According to the documentary, many of these events were intentionally undocumented. No public photos, no official guest lists, no social media posts confirming they even happened. Which is exactly why 50 Cent keeps returning to the same question throughout this part of the documentary. If these meetings were normal, if these gatherings were harmless, if these rooms were simply private spaces for conversation, then why were they kept so carefully hidden from public view?
That claimed, which we know wasn't true.
Yeah, check this out. We don't talk about things that are nonsense. We don't even entertain nonsense, my brother. So we're not even going to go there, with all due respect, but I appreciate you as a journalist asking. Thank you.
Because you listen, 7 years ago, I'd have been like, yo, did you hire somebody to kill Pac? But no, you do it like a journalist.
Yeah, no, I mean, we wouldn't even get into nonsense like that. You know what I'm saying? It's nonsense.
Which we never believed, by the way.
Yeah.
In the next part of the documentary, 50 Cent begins focusing on a different pattern surrounding Diddy. Not just where these gatherings allegedly happened, but when they happened. According to 50 Cent, many of the environments connected to Diddy's private circle reportedly didn't begin during the public events that everyone could see. Instead, they allegedly began after those events ended. Late at night, after the cameras stopped rolling, after the red carpets cleared. According to the documentary, many of these parties reportedly started when the official celebrations were already over. Industry events would finish, award shows would end, public parties would wind down. But according to 50 Cent, that was often when another set of gatherings allegedly began. These were described as late-night parties happening far away from public visibility, not events promoted online, not parties filled with photographers. Instead, according to the documentary, these gatherings were after-hours environments that only a small group of people knew about. 50 Cent suggests that these after-hours events allegedly took place in exclusive locations, private estates hidden away from the public eye, luxury penthouses high above city skylines, and in some cases, luxury yachts positioned far away from crowded nightlife scenes. According to the narrative presented in the documentary, these locations allowed gatherings to happen without the usual attention that follows celebrity events. No large crowds, no reporters, no cameras waiting outside, just selected guests entering private spaces where the environment was controlled. And according to 50 Cent, what makes these gatherings even more interesting is the way they were remembered. Because the documentary suggests that many of these moments were never recorded publicly, no photos shared afterward, and no videos appearing online, no official confirmation that these gatherings even took place. Instead, according to 50 Cent, many of these events existed only through the memories of insiders who were reportedly present. Stories shared privately, experiences remembered by those inside the room, but very little evidence reaching the public. And inside these environments, the documentary suggests another theme begins appearing: private romantic relationships. According to 50 Cent, some connections allegedly developed inside these late-night gatherings. Relationships that insiders reportedly noticed. Associations that people within those circles may have talked about privately, but relationships that were never openly acknowledged in public interviews or media appearances. Publicly, certain figures appeared distant. Some individuals were rarely seen together in official settings, but according to the documentary's framing, the private familiarity may have looked very different. 50 Cent suggests that some of these connections were intentionally kept away from public branding, carefully separated from public image, handled quietly behind the scenes, which is why the documentary repeatedly returns to a very simple but powerful question. If these relationships were completely normal, if these gatherings were simply private social events, then why were so many of these connections never openly acknowledged?
50 Cent has been working on this documentary for almost 2 years. The footage he has is insane. The people he got speaking about Diddy is ridiculous.
As the documentary moves deeper into the story, 50 Cent begins revisiting some of the conversations that insiders have allegedly been whispering about for years. But instead of presenting direct accusations, 50 Cent approaches the subject through patterns, questions, and the contrast between public image and private behavior. According to the narrative presented in the documentary, some of the discussions circulating within entertainment circles involved alleged relationships with young girls connected to certain private environments. These were not conversations that played out in public interviews. They were described as quiet concerns raised privately by people who claimed to have seen or heard about certain situations. According to 50 Cent, some observers reportedly questioned age differences in certain environments, why especially in spaces where powerful industry figures were surrounded by younger individuals. These concerns, according to the documentary, were rarely raised publicly. Instead, they allegedly remained inside private conversations, shared quietly among insiders, but never reaching the wider public. And according to 50 Cent, there were moments described by some insiders that reportedly made certain people uncomfortable. Was situations where individuals present in these environments allegedly began asking questions about what they were witnessing. But those questions, according to the documentary, rarely turned into public statements. Instead, they often faded back into silence. The documentary also briefly explores another topic that, according to 50 Cent, has circulated quietly within industry discussions: alleged private relationships with men. Once again, when the documentary does not claim to present legal proof, instead 50 Cent focuses on the idea of identity being carefully managed. Because publicly, figures like Diddy have built extremely powerful global brands: music mogul, business leader, cultural icon. But according to 50 Cent, some insiders suggested that certain aspects of identity may have been handled very differently behind closed doors. Relationships that allegedly existed privately, not connections that were never openly acknowledged, associations that insiders reportedly talked about, but that never appeared in the public narrative. And this leads directly to one of the central ideas discussed in this section of the documentary: the difference between public image and private identity. In the entertainment industry, reputation is everything. Careers are built on perception, brands are carefully managed, and according to 50 Cent, maintaining that image sometimes requires strict control over what information reaches the public. Selective interviews, carefully worded statements, questions that are avoided or redirected. According to the documentary, significant effort may have been placed on keeping certain aspects of life private: stories that insiders allegedly discussed quietly, relationships that were never confirmed publicly, topics that rarely appeared in interviews. And for 50 Cent, the repeated appearance of secrecy is what raises the biggest question. Because when the same topics continue appearing in private conversations, when insiders repeatedly describe the same patterns, and when the public narrative remains carefully controlled, it naturally leads to a deeper question: if there was nothing unusual happening, why was so much effort placed on keeping certain identities and relationships hidden from public view?
A lot of people say I'm doing this out of revenge because we've got beef. I won't deny it. Me and Diddy have had issues. We've been going at it since 2006. He blocked Mace from signing with me. I dissed him in the track. He launched the vodka line. I launched mine. It's been a back and forth for years. You know why he's so desperate to shut this film down? Because he knows we found things: footage, phone calls, conversations he recorded himself, contracts, NDAs, real receipts. But Diddy ain't the only problem. He's just a symbol. This industry is full of people like him smiling in the spotlight while pulling strings and hurting people behind the scenes. I don't make things up.
As the documentary continues unfolding, 50 Cent begins widening the scope of the conversation. Up until this point, much of the focus has centered mainly around Diddy, the environment surrounding him, and the private gatherings that allegedly took place behind closed doors. But according to 50 Cent, the story may not involve just one person. Instead, the documentary suggests that some of these environments reportedly included connections with other powerful celebrities, figures who hold major influence across music, entertainment, and business. According to the narrative presented in the documentary, there were alleged secret relationships between Diddy and several well-known celebrity figures. These were not always partnerships that appeared publicly. They were not collaborations announced on stage or discussed in interviews. Instead, according to 50 Cent, some of these connections allegedly developed quietly in private environments where powerful names interacted away from public visibility: private gatherings, exclusive parties, invitation-only events where only selected guests were allowed inside. Inside those spaces, the documentary suggests that powerful names reportedly moved together privately, forming relationships that the public rarely saw. But what makes this situation even more interesting, according to 50 Cent, is the contrast between public distance and private familiarity. Publicly, certain celebrities appeared to operate in completely separate circles: different brands, different businesses, different public narratives. Some of these figures rarely appeared together in interviews. Others were hardly ever photographed at the same events. Yet, according to the documentary, private interactions between some of these figures allegedly happened much more frequently than the public realized. 50 Cent suggests that in certain environments, the same influential names reportedly appeared again and again. Powerful individuals sharing the same rooms, attending the same private gatherings, moving within the same elite social circles. Alongside these alleged connections, the documentary also revisits misconduct rumors that have circulated quietly within industry conversations for years. These were not always rumors that reached major headlines. They did not dominate news cycles or trigger large public investigations. Instead, according to 50 Cent, they remained stories whispered privately within entertainment circles. Conversations shared quietly among insiders. Stories told inside private environments. Rumors that allegedly circulated within those circles but rarely crossed into the public spotlight. According to the documentary's narrative, some of these stories describe disturbing situations that allegedly happened behind closed doors. Events that insiders reportedly talked about privately. Moments that people claim to remember, but stories that never became public controversies. And that leads directly to another major theme discussed by 50 Cent. Industry silence. Because according to the documentary, one reason these stories may never have exploded publicly is the way powerful industries sometimes handle uncomfortable conversations. Reputation matters. Business relationships matter. Careers depend on maintaining connections. And when influential people share the same networks, speaking out publicly can carry serious consequences. According to 50 Cent, and this environment may have created a culture where certain stories stayed inside private circles instead of becoming public scandals. Not necessarily because nothing happened, but because discussing powerful figures publicly can be extremely complicated. So instead, the rumors reportedly continued circulating quietly. Stories told privately, questions raised among insiders, but very little said openly. And this raises one of the most difficult questions presented in this part of the documentary. If these stories were circulating inside the industry, if insiders were aware of certain rumors, if powerful figures shared the same private environments, then one question becomes unavoidable. Why did the industry remain so quiet about it for so long?
Has been warning us about Jay-Z. Jay-Z has now had an official lawsuit. It's everywhere. It's now being talked about louder than ever. I guess, does that give you some peace to know that people are finally really questioning this man?
It's emboldening me. I spoke on Piers Morgan. I said that I had 3 victims that I've been working with, victims of the Carters, that were ready to come forward. This might help them feel a little more confident now. So this is great because he's been evading. But the thing is, everyone in the backdrop knew that he was the celebrity John Doe. Everybody knew that. They knew it when I did Piers Morgan.
Is Beyonce celebrity B?
I hope to God not. But she was around. And she's very... she's got enough on her plate. After everything that happened with the election and everything that's happening right now, I'm not going to dump on that woman. She got better fish to fry.
Well,
what I will say is that her husband, she knows exactly who he is.
Yeah.
She knows. She knows.
Rihanna was trafficked to Def Jam.
She was an innocent baby when she came over here. And look at her now.
14 going on 15 years old. Flown over without parental supervision in a private plane by a man who was supposed to be a producer who auditioned her at 3 a.m. in the fucking morning in a hotel room. Auditioning at 3 a.m. in the morning, a 14-year-old girl. She was flown to another country. She was taken to Def Jam headquarters. She was left in a conference room alone with Sean Carter for nearly 6 hours alone with no parental supervision. Her father collected a $500,000 check. She has the fastest
Diddy isn't going down
deal
quietly.
in debt.
As the documentary continues, 50 Cent begins focusing on a pattern that he believes appears repeatedly around Diddy, not just the parties, not just the locations, but the people who were always present. According to 50 Cent, whenever conversations about private environments surrounding Diddy come up, certain names and faces allegedly appear again and again. Not random guests, not constantly changing groups of people. Instead, the documentary suggests that a small inner circle of individuals reportedly move through many of the same private environments together. Private gatherings, closed-door parties, late-night meetings, and according to 50 Cent, the same individuals were allegedly seen in these spaces repeatedly. These were not always people who appeared publicly alongside Diddy. Many of them were rarely mentioned in interviews. Some were hardly ever seen in media coverage. And yet, according to the narrative presented in the documentary, these individuals allegedly remain closely connected within Diddy's private circle. 50 Cent describes these connections as unspoken relationships between powerful figures. Not partnerships that were publicly announced, not friendships openly discussed in the media. Instead, the documentary suggests these were quiet connections that existed behind the scenes. According to 50 Cent, the environments where these connections reportedly appeared most often were private inner circles operating behind closed doors, exclusive gatherings where guest lists were small, rooms where only selected individuals were allowed inside, spaces that operated far away from cameras and public attention. And inside those environments, the same individuals allegedly continued appearing over and over again. According to the documentary, when this repetition became one of the most noticeable patterns, the same faces at multiple gatherings, the same names connected to different events, the same individuals moving through the same private spaces. For 50 Cent, this repetition raises important questions. Because in an industry as large as entertainment, gatherings normally include many different people. But according to the documentary's narrative, certain private environments reportedly remain connected to the same tight group. Another theme that appears throughout this section is the idea of off-record relationships, connections that insiders reportedly knew about, associations that existed within private circles, but relationships that were rarely acknowledged publicly. According to 50 Cent, these connections were often handled quietly. They did not appear in official interviews. They were rarely mentioned in media coverage. And when questions about certain individuals appeared, well, the answers were often vague or avoided entirely, which placed many of these relationships in a strange position. They were never officially confirmed, but they were also never clearly denied. Instead, they existed in a kind of gray area, visible inside private environments, but invisible in public conversations. And for 50 Cent, that silence is one of the most interesting parts of the story. Because when connections between powerful figures repeatedly appear in private spaces, when the same individuals show up again and again, and when those relationships remain unspoken publicly, it naturally leads to another question. Why do these associations continue operating quietly behind closed doors instead of being acknowledged openly?
How did you get that footage of Diddy?
I figured most journalists would not disclose their sources.
If Sean Combs watches this, what do you think he's going to feel?
Like, wow, this is amazing. I think he's going to say this is the best documentary I've seen in a long time. My favorite villain? I kind of like Diddy.
As the documentary moves forward, 50 Cent begins returning to something that has followed this story from the very beginning. The idea that many of the questions surrounding Diddy did not start with this new documentary. In fact, according to 50 Cent, the conversation started much earlier. Back on December 2nd, 2025, when 50 Cent released the first Netflix documentary about Diddy, the internet quickly filled with discussions about private environments, inner circles, Washington, and the alleged culture surrounding certain elite gatherings. That original series included 4 parts, and it immediately sparked curiosity across the hip-hop community and beyond. But according to 50 Cent, that first documentary did not answer every question. Instead, it raised new ones. Questions about the people surrounding Diddy. Questions about the environments insiders had reportedly talked about for years. He questions about the networks of powerful figures who allegedly moved through the same private circles. Now, in this newer documentary, 50 Cent revisits those questions and begins exploring the possibility of hidden alliances within the entertainment industry. According to the narrative presented in the documentary, some insiders believe that certain powerful figures within the industry may have coordinated behind the scenes. not necessarily through public partnerships, not through collaborations announced in headlines, but through quieter relationships that existed outside the public spotlight. These alleged alliances were not always visible to fans or media outlets. Instead, they reportedly operated behind the scenes, inside the same private environments discussed earlier in the documentary. Private gatherings, exclusive meetings, rooms where powerful individuals interacted without public attention. According to 50 Cent, one of the most interesting aspects of these alleged alliances is the contrast between public separation and possible private alignment. Publicly, many influential figures appear completely independent. Different companies, different brands, different professional circles. But according to the documentary's narrative, those same figures may have shared overlapping networks behind the scenes. They may not appear together publicly, but insiders reportedly claim that their paths crossed regularly inside private spaces. The documentary suggests that these overlapping networks of powerful figures may explain why certain accusations have never fully disappeared. Stories that were once discussed in private, rumors that circulated quietly, concerns that appeared briefly in conversations before fading from public attention. According to 50 Cent, these accusations did not completely vanish. Instead, they simply moved out of the spotlight. The headlines faded, public discussions slowed down, but within industry circles, the questions allegedly continued. And that is exactly why 50 Cent keeps revisiting the same topics in each documentary release. Because according to him, many of the questions raised in earlier documentaries were never clearly answered. Stories about private gatherings, questions about inner circles, discussions about the networks connecting powerful figures. For 50 Cent, those unanswered questions are the reason the story keeps continuing. Because if the first documentary introduced the conversation, and later documentaries expanded the narrative, then it suggests something important. The story surrounding Diddy and the environments around him may not be finished yet. And according to 50 Cent, until those earlier questions are fully addressed, the accusations and rumors connected to those environments may continue lingering in the background of the entertainment industry. As the documentary moves deeper into the story, 50 Cent begins focusing on another important theme: power. Not just who attended certain gatherings, not just who appeared inside private rooms, but who controlled those environments. Because according to 50 Cent, my understanding the dynamics inside these exclusive spaces requires looking closely at the balance of influence between the people involved. Throughout this section, the documentary revisits what it describes as unconfirmed associations involving powerful figures, connections that insiders allegedly discussed quietly within industry circles, relationships that were reportedly visible inside private environments, yet connections that were rarely acknowledged publicly. According to 50 Cent, many of these associations existed in a strange position. People were seen together in private gatherings. Names appeared repeatedly in the same environments. But publicly, those relationships were almost never addressed. No interviews discussing them. No public statements confirming them. And when questions surfaced, answers were often vague or avoided entirely, which created a situation where certain bonds were never officially acknowledged. According to the documentary's narrative, these connections seem to exist privately but not publicly. Publicly erased, but privately preserved. And according to 50 Cent, this pattern raises interesting questions about the way relationships operate inside elite environments. Because many of the gatherings discussed in the documentary allegedly happened inside private rooms with restricted access. These were not open spaces. Entry was controlled. Guest lists were carefully managed. Security was often present, which means that the people organizing those environments held significant influence. According to 50 Cent, the individuals who controlled these spaces also controlled who was allowed inside them, who received invitations, who was welcomed into the room, and who remained outside. In other words, power determined access. And when access is controlled by a small group of powerful individuals, the balance of influence inside those rooms can shift dramatically. And the documentary also briefly touches on another topic that reportedly raised concerns among some insiders: age differences inside certain environments. According to 50 Cent, some individuals present in these spaces were significantly younger than the powerful figures hosting or attending the gatherings. These differences reportedly raised quiet discussions among observers, not public accusations, but private concerns about the imbalance of influence between older, powerful industry figures and younger individuals present in the same environment. Because in situations where wealth, status, and authority are heavily concentrated on one side, the dynamics of interaction can become uneven. According to 50 Cent, these concerns were rarely discussed publicly. Instead, they were often shared quietly inside the same circles where the gatherings were happening. And for 50 Cent, this imbalance is one of the reasons the documentary continues returning to the same question. Because when powerful individuals control the rooms, when guest lists are carefully selected, and when relationships remain hidden from public view, it becomes difficult to understand what really happens inside those spaces, which leads to the question raised throughout this part of the documentary. Inside those private rooms, where influence, access, and then reputation all intersect, who truly holds the power? As the documentary reaches its final section, 50 Cent steps back from individual stories and begins focusing on a much bigger picture. Because according to 50 Cent, the conversation surrounding Diddy may not be about just one party, one rumor, or one private meeting. Instead, he suggests the possibility of a larger pattern that has existed inside the entertainment industry for years. According to the narrative presented in the documentary, long-running rumors have circulated quietly within entertainment circles for a long time. These were not always stories that reached the public. They were not always headlines in the news. Instead, they were described as private conversations shared among insiders, stories told quietly in studios, discussions whispered during industry events, moments that some people allegedly talked about privately but rarely spoke about publicly. According to 50 Cent, some of these conversations involve concerns about vulnerable individuals entering elite environments, exclusive parties, invitation-only gatherings, private rooms where extremely powerful figures in music, business, and entertainment were present. Inside these environments, according to the documentary, the balance of influence could become complicated. Because when individuals with enormous power, wealth, and influence share spaces with people who have far less influence, the dynamics of those environments can shift quickly. According to 50 Cent, these concerns were rarely discussed openly. Instead, they remained part of the quiet conversations happening inside the industry. Another theme that appears throughout the documentary is repetition. 50 Cent suggests that certain patterns reportedly appeared again and again over the years. Private gatherings, restricted guest lists, inner circles that rarely changed, events that allegedly happened away from cameras, and conversations that stayed inside the room. According to 50 Cent, when the same patterns repeat over and over again, they begin to look less like coincidence and more like a culture of secrecy. But the documentary also raises an important question. Why were these conversations rarely discussed publicly? According to 50 Cent, one possible explanation is the role that silence can play in protecting powerful reputations. The entertainment industry is built on relationships, business partnerships, career opportunities, and public image. When powerful figures are involved, speaking openly about controversial topics can carry serious risks. People may fear losing connections. Opportunities may disappear. Careers can be affected. Because of this, according to the documentary, where some individuals may choose to stay silent even when rumors are circulating privately, not necessarily because nothing happened, but because challenging powerful networks can be extremely difficult. And for years, according to 50 Cent, this silence may have allowed many of these conversations to remain hidden inside industry circles. Stories discussed privately, questions raised quietly, but very little said publicly. However, the situation may be changing. Because with the release of 50 Cent's Netflix documentary, the conversation has now moved from private whispers to a global platform watched by millions. And once a story reaches that level of visibility, it becomes much harder to ignore. Social media begins amplifying the discussion. Fans begin asking questions. Journalists begin revisiting old rumors. And suddenly, conversations that once existed quietly inside industry circles become public debates. According to 50 Cent, and that is exactly what is happening now. The release of the documentary has placed a spotlight on a story that had previously remained in the shadows, which means the pressure surrounding the conversation is now growing. People want answers. People want explanations. And the industry itself may eventually be forced to address questions that have been circulating quietly for years. Because once silence is broken, it becomes much harder to restore it again.